Hi, everybody. It's morning time. Drinking my coffee. Recorded this last night, but it wasn't very good, so I thought I'm going to redo it this morning. So, anyhow, week 7, our final week. It's been quite the term. I really have really enjoyed working with you guys, and hope that it's been a good experience for you too. So I just want to wrap up week 7. I've got kind of a list of things to talk about here. So if it appears that I'm reading, I'm just trying to keep close to my script so I don't go off, which is a tendency for me. So welcome to the world of extroversion, right? So so week 7, we've started off with a discussion question on gender and leadership, and I really appreciate that Norhaus included a chapter on this. Healthcare and education are dominated by women, but unfortunately they're not seen in higher ranks within these organizations. So progress has been made, but as we learned this last week, there's a long way to go. So I find gender to be a very interesting topic. It's complicated, as most things are. If you think about it, we're socialized or kind of taught how to respond to things based on our gender. So if you don't play by society's rules as to what's expected of little girls and little boys and men and women, then society doesn't know what to do with you. So I have a lot of personal experience with this. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is a full-blown tomboy, has been since birth. I dressed her in pink and dresses until she started having a say on how she could express herself. And from that day forward, no pink at all. So it's interesting. I've watched her struggle. She's 18 now, so I've watched her struggle with this, and as a result, it's obviously made an impression on me, and it's made me more sensitive to these norms that we have. So being a female and a member of a minority, or somebody with a disability, in a leadership role and frankly anybody, being a leader requires that you have a lot of strength, endurance, and that you have very fine-tuned skills, especially when you're outside of what is viewed as the norm of leadership roles, because you're going against organizational, in some cases professional, and in some cases cultural norms. So society just doesn't know, or these groups don't know what to do with you. I think the first step is just to try to appreciate that it's a norm. It's not necessarily anything to get too upset about, but just realize that it's different than what people are used to. It's kind of like working with my mom. My mom really struggles with technology. So it's not that she's against technology. She just doesn't know it. So I have to help explain it. Heck, my husband doesn't even really grasp the concept of touchscreen. You'll give him something and the screen will change. And he's like, what happened? What happened? Why can't I see what I was looking at? And I'm like, because you touched the screen. So I just have to hold the phone up for him and show there's always navigation to get you back to where you were. So yeah, here I go getting off of the subject again. But anyhow, strong female, minority, and even male leaders exist in all areas of business and politics. But leadership roles, especially for these particular people, because it's against the norm, is very, very lonely. Leadership in and of itself is lonely, but if you're kind of outside of the norm, it's going to even be lonelier. So to be successful, and if this is your goal, you have to find your own way. You have to find your own way. Everyone has to find their own way in how you want to approach leadership. But if you're in these particular groups, you really need to have a very strong support group. You need to find your way in how you're going to meet these challenges. I think that's why we reference leadership as a journey. So it's just, you got to find your own way. And it's lonely, and you have to find your support system. So anyhow, I was really inspired by your responses to the discussion question. Many of you, most of you, committed to making changes in the cultural norms around gender. And I think in time this is going to help. But for now, we really have to work and focus on developing ourselves as leaders, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in one of these positions without being prepared and to know how to do the job and do it well. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for society to change these norms, or organizations or professions, we need to develop ourselves to be some, just killer well, not killer, that's kind of a bad word, but we really have to develop ourselves to be effective leaders. So I don't know, I think I mentioned in a couple of my discussion question responses to, when I was grading to several of you, there was a quote once that, I don't know, I remember from a long, long time ago. I think Edward Deming said it. It just kind of sounds like something he'd say. Anyhow, he mentioned that as managers and leaders, we should manage the measures. So, and that is like always in my mind. So it has been such a helpful thing. What he means by it is that you should focus less on managing people and their personalities and quirks and things, and really focus when you're managing and leading, manage and lead the measures. So, for instance, instead of getting overly concerned about people and their approaches to their work, really focus on the outcomes they produce. So, and then work as diligently as you can to be extremely clear on what the expectations are and what the measures should be. And then develop ways to make sure that their performance measures are as readily in their face as you can get them. So, for instance, in an academic environment, faculty work, and I know most of you are skeptical about this, but they are really held accountable to course evaluations. So I've never fired anybody because of a bad course evaluation, but if over a period of time, if there's 2 to 3 of them, or over a year or two, they are increasingly not popular, but not good, that would justify them not teaching again. So I review the course evaluations myself, and I work one-on-one with faculty. And instead of saying, to the faculty, I don't really like this, or I don't like this about you, I'll pull the course evaluations up and I'll say, most of your peers are performing here. The expectation is that you're here, but you're coming in here. So what can we do to kind of close that gap? And I work with them one-on-one. I provide them access to resources. We brainstorm. We, as a group of colleagues, work to support each other. But ultimately, if there's not a desire to improve, then I just don't think this is a good fit. So really, my best advice to you is manage the measures. So create outcome, don't create them, but identify the outcome measures for every person that reports to you, and yourself too, and hold yourself accountable and report those outcomes back. And when people see that you're holding yourself accountable to a set of measures, then they are fully accepting of being managed by the measures. So anyhow, that's just my input. So discussion 22 had to do with responding to cultures. This exercise actually was from Norhaus himself. So I didn't even write it myself. I think I tweaked it a bit. But culture is a very, again, interesting topic. There's a lot of buzz around it these days. And if I can just really be completely honest with you guys, I'm going to be vulnerable here. It really kind of stresses me out, or used to stress me out. Not because I don't value diversity. I've had a very interesting upbringing and career, so I've been exposed to a lot of diversity, and from every perspective you can think of. And I really do value that diversity. I think it really has it's supported my career growth and development, and I think has supported the work that I've been a part of in organizations. So it's not that I don't support it. What really kind of throws me off is that in all the training that I've been through, and I'm required to do various levels of training, and then I had my own desire to do that because this is part of what I think this program should address. So I've constantly been looking for like a really good cultural competency training. But in my experience, most organizations treat it as here's the program. Okay, you've participated. Check, we're done. So that's what we're going to do towards cultural competence, or to inform our employees on the different cultures that they might interact with. And it just seemed kind of rote. It was just checking a box. But there was never any follow-up discussion as to what we're supposed to do with it. So, and I mean, I interact with culture, like all different kinds of cultures, and I get overwhelmed thinking that I need to go out and learn everything there is about all these different cultures that I interact with. And it's overwhelming. I don't understand how I could ever accomplish that. And then to know it, and then to be able to use it when I interact with people, and just say, well, you're from this heritage, so I know I can't say this and I shouldn't do that, and blah blah blah. It's like I just get overwhelmed with that approach. On the other side of that, there's a book that I've read several years ago. Actually heard the speaker, Patty Rose is her name, and she's written a number of cultural competency books. And I participated in a workshop that she delivered. And she talks about the various levels of cultural competence. And I was rather shocked that being culturally blind is not good either. So to say, well, I don't see differences in skin color or heritage or, genders or what have you, to not see it is then to be considered culturally blind. So I mean, that's not the right approach either, to completely ignore what somebody's background or what culture they're coming from. So what are we supposed to do? I don't know. So years ago, I met a friend of mine. Her name is Hannah, in my doctoral program. This is back in the early 2000s. She's a Black woman that was raised in the South, I believe. And one time I had this awesome opportunity, and obviously felt comfortable enough that I could just kind of be bold and say, hey, I'm a white woman and you're a Black woman. So can you help me understand, so what is your expectation of me as a white woman in demonstrating respect for your cultural heritage and your background and your minority status? And we just had a really nice conversation. And she was really, I think she was very honest with me. And she said, I don't expect you to know me, and I don't think you should think that I know you. But I think we should see the differences and then be interested enough in each other that we can have open dialogue about it and say, so why did your parents do that? Or why does this happen? So that we can learn from each other and really value each other as individuals. So I think from my personal experience, the highest form of respect that you can give to an individual is not to ignore their skin color or gender or heritage or their belief system. I think the highest form of respect is to treat each person as an individual. Don't assume that you know them. Don't assume that you get them because you went to a class. Don't assume that you understand the struggles they've gone through, the dreams that they've had. Don't assume, but invest in them and get to know them as individual, unique human beings. So from organizational perspectives, I think when you get into these leadership roles and you have input on what cultural competency training is, I really think that we need to emphasize that it's not just participating in this program and check, we did it, but we really need to emphasize that the goal is to see the person as a unique individual with similarities and differences to ourselves, and to demonstrate the utmost respect by taking time to ask, explore with them how you can best meet their needs. I think it's dangerous to assume that we get people because we participated in a class. So, and I've got to emphasize this because it's a leadership class, but as a leader, if you don't demonstrate and role model in a very real, deliberate, public way, this training and your ability to respect cultural differences, but you expect others to do it, you're going to lose a ton of credit with your people. So you've got to be the role model of this within your organization. So you've got to be the champion. So again, the author of that book is Patty Ross. I'd love to add it to the course. I just hesitate adding more for you. It's not a huge book, but it's still another book. So, but it's called Cultural Competence for Health Administrators and Public Health. And she really gets into the business case of cultural competence. And she says, if your mission states something to the effect of meeting the needs of a community or a population, she said, you better know that population and know everything that you can about them and what their needs and expectations are. And you need to adjust your business model, the way that you do business, to meet those needs. And if you don't, you really don't want to meet the needs of your community. You just want to meet part of them. So I respect that. I thought that made a lot of sense to me. So anyhow, Project Implicit was the Dropbox assignment. So I participated in this years and years ago, Project Implicit, and I was really struck by this concept of implicit bias. So an implicit bias is it's something that's implied in our thoughts and our behaviors, but something that is possibly something that we're not aware of. So hopefully that's connecting with this whole concept of Johari's window. Anyhow, as I learned that biases are not wrong, I mean, there's this stuff that is, so it's not necessarily a wrong thing. It's just something that happens. But once I accepted that, then I felt like I could really explore it more and try to gain some understanding about myself. So once in a conversation with, it was our director of diversity at my last job, I remember having this, I don't really know how this came up, but again, it's an extrovert, so you don't really know where things come from. They just kind of come out. So, but we were chatting about biases, and I said, I have a bias against stay-at-home moms. I just, every time I meet one, I just really have to work hard to control. I want to lump them all in a category with a rather negative and bad description. It's not good. And I know, clearly I know, that not all stay-at-home moms are the same. There are some exceptional stay-at-home moms. And though it has never been my reality, I've never been a stay-at-home mom. I've never really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's not rational at all. So once I identified that, I had to figure out what am I going to do with it. So I don't know if you remember back to your statistics days, but do you remember what a control variable is? So a control variable is something that you end up measuring in your data so that you can watch or monitor the impact of that particular item and its impact on the rest of the data you collect. So for instance, if you're doing, let's just say you're doing a survey on, let's say, I don't know, satisfaction with your provider. Let's go with that. And you think, well, I think having different types of insurance might impact how a patient could evaluate a provider. So you're like, I'm concerned about that. So what you would do is you, on the survey, would add a question about, what type of insurance do you have? And you'd collect that data. And then when you are done with all of your data collection, when you analyze it, you look to see, is there a difference between people with varying levels of coverage and their responses to different questions within the survey. So it's a way for you to monitor and control the impact of something on the rest of something. So anyhow, so I think a nice way to, or I guess it's my way, I don't know if it's a nice way, my way of working to control this bias that I've identified around stay-at-home moms is to really become aware of it and to collect data on people. So I'll find, when I meet somebody, I find out, what they do with their for a living. And if I find out that they are a stay-at-home mom, I'm collecting that variable and I'm monitoring and controlling it to make sure that it doesn't influence the rest of it. So I'm taking something that is implicit and trying to make it more explicit and be more aware of it and control it. And I think over time, as I've met more and more, people that fall into this category in my head, it's been shaping and modifying my bias. So anyhow, Project Implicit is a huge exercise that helps us expand our open window and to control and to know what's in those blind spots and what's in our hidden area. So it's extremely important. And I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of people that I know that are extremely bright and gifted people. But there's this one thing that has held back their career. And they're not necessarily open to hear about it, nor have I ever felt or others felt that we're in the position of saying something to them about it. But you watch this one thing kind of limit them in their careers, in their lives, in their growth and development and fulfillment and self-actualization on Maslow's hierarchy. So I think we all struggle with that. We all have these things. And I think as a leader, because you're in front of people and they're watching you so closely, and you need to be the role model for how you expect them to behave and act and respond in their environment. I think you just have to work a little extra diligently to make sure that you're aware of those things. Anyhow, so the final project was final thing was the final reflection paper. A couple of you, you just blew my mind. So it was amazing. I am so appreciative that most of you really owned these reflection papers. You really thought deeply and applied these concepts, and that you really worked to make meaning of what does this mean to me. So leadership is a really tough topic. I've been teaching it seriously since 2012. So about 7 years. So it's a tough topic to teach. There's theories on it. So I found a really good theory book because I think theories are important to understand, and I think they can help shape us. But it's so much more. It's like to keep it just as a theory discussion would be inappropriate. We have to take those theories and then you have to make it personal. You have to figure out what is my way of leadership, realizing that your way still has to meet these outcome measures. So you can't decide, well, I'm going to be a dictator, and then look at the measures and say, well, look at this, it's not working. So anyhow, we all have our own way of figuring out how we want to lead, and then we have to hold ourselves accountable to these outcomes. But I couldn't leave the course just as a bunch of theories and reflection exercises. There's a very specific skill set that leaders need to be effective in their jobs. And I know it's alluded to in a lot of the other courses, but there's really no deliberate content or opportunities to learn more about or even practice to some degree some of these skills. So I added the leadership development skills to the course so that you could have at least an awareness of them, where some of the top people or people who are writing and researching these areas, where they're coming from, so that you at least can start to think about what and how you're going to respond to these. So stuff like understanding conflict, managing change, how do you help people accept change and move forward? How do you control biases? And then finally, how do you discipline yourself moving forward as a leader? I mean, you'll never stop learning or growing and developing. So you have to develop this discipline to continually to know yourself, to reflect on your thoughts, your actions, and your attitudes, and to work to change yourself first. So in my opinion, to lead and to manage is to first demonstrate that you can lead and manage yourself. And if you can't do that, then you have no business managing and leading other people. So anyhow, finally, I just want to emphasize that to grow and develop as a leader requires a lot of practice. So practice, practice, practice. The upside is that you don't have to have these big L positions to start your practice. You can start with the little L's. So in your positions, no matter what they are, start to volunteer for these little L roles. So if there's a committee being put together on, whatever, volunteer to be part of that committee. Volunteer to serve in some type of capacity to lead that committee, whether you're taking minutes or scheduling the meetings or running the meetings, whatever. Get involved in professional associations, get involved in the RIT Alumni Association. I mean, get involved in something, church and other community organizations. Get involved, I guess, is kind of the key. And then volunteer and start to develop and exercise and practice your leadership skills. And then, as we've learned from this book also, learn how to lead by learning how to follow and follow well. So I hope you keep this text close to you and every once in a while pick it up and remind yourself what this is all about. We need a lot of change in healthcare and in our world in general, and it's going to come from leaders. And I have a lot of hope after working with you guys because you really seem to get it. So anyhow, I really, it's sad to say goodbye, but I really appreciate this last 7 weeks. Thank you for your investment in the class and in me and your patience, and I appreciate that. Grades will be posted later today, so I'll get those going. I think I'm all done. I just need to go through the process of making them available to you. So if you have any questions or concerns about anything, please let me know. And most of all, just stay in touch. So I really enjoyed getting to know you guys a little bit better, and I look forward to working with you in the future. So have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.